Thank you so much, Ann. So good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the October 13th, 2022 Bureau of Household Goods and Services Advisory Council meeting to order. My name is Justin Paddock. I'm Chief of the Bureau. Today, we are online. We're fully online today as opposed to the hybrid meeting we had last June. But as I mentioned before we started, when we get to our final agenda item, I'll be asking the council as well as the public what their preference is for 2023 meeting dates. And with that, since our last meeting, we actually have two new council members. In just a few minutes, I'll be introducing, but you'll probably see some new names on your agenda, which is Sarah Oakley and Tom Keepers. In our next agenda item, I'm going to ask them just to briefly introduce themselves. But I'd also like to welcome department staff that are here with us today. Michael Knotz, who's our DCA legal counsel, as well as Ann. Ann, as always, thank you so much for moderating. And we also have Bryce Penny from the Public Affairs Office, I believe, who's going to be managing our webcast today. So thank you for helping us out. Ann's already walked us through sort of the public comment process, and she'll sort of reiterate those instructions later on, so I won't go into any detail there. I think the one sort of last introductory comment I wanted to make before we move through the agenda is I think that today you're going to hear "I'm sorry" from me a lot, and so I'm just going to apologize up front. I've made several promises at the June meeting, and the Bureau wasn't able to meet all the goals that I really had set. You're going to hear specifics, for example, about stings, and as well as our vacancy rate. I think that the number one thing that has been surprising to me is the difficulty of hiring. You've probably heard this from many employers, but we're just not getting the same amount of candidates that we have in past recruitments. We actually have some ideas on how to fix that and address that. And one of our sister programs, the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers, has been having some success with that. And so we're going to be cloning essentially an approach they've been taking on some recruitments. But we'll get into specifics later in the meeting. With that, we are also going to be going a little bit out of order today, just out of respect for a few of our department personnel. After public comment, we're going to take agenda item number 8, which is our Business Modernization Program update up by Lisa Rangel. She'll be speaking to that. And then we'll also be doing our fiscal update, which is agenda item 6A, so that those staff actually have quite a few other commitments today. So we just wanted to make sure they can speak, answer your questions, and then they'll log off. And then we'll return to the regular order of the agenda. And with that, Ashley, I'd like you to call the roll.
Good morning. Pascal Beniamini.
Yes, good morning.
Bert Grimes.
Morning.
Tom Keepers.
Here.
Donald Lucas.
Good morning.
Sarah Oakley.
Good morning.
Dan Rhodes.
Good morning.
Toby Taylor.
Good morning.
Steve Weidekamp.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. So with that, we will move on to agenda item number 2, which is our introduction of our new council members. We're just going to go in alphabetical order today. So Tom, who's the Executive Director of the Service Contract Industry Council, could you please introduce yourself to the group?
Happy to, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you. I'm honored to be a part of this process, this group. I am the outlier, though. It's not good morning. It's actually good afternoon here in Madison, Wisconsin. So I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon. But it's again, pleasure to be a part of it. I've been on the industry side for over 3 decades, working in these products and services, mostly from a product perspective. So the product and loss, profit and loss statements, things of that nature, but really have worked in just about every aspect of the products that we support. So I'm not an attorney, and again, my background is more business management. But just by way of sharing what's not on the screen, happily married here in Madison, Wisconsin, the capital, the great capital over here, kind of a sister city, if you will, to Sacramento in a number of different ways. Politically, I think perhaps one of them. But I have 2 adult daughters that are living in the area and happily, and always look forward to seeing them. But again, thank you and appreciate all the support I've had so far with onboarding and the board training yesterday as well. So look forward to it. Thanks.
Thank you, Tom. And with that, Sarah Oakley is also joining us. She actually works at Atlas Transfer and Storage Company as well as Oakley Relocation Services. Sarah, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Good morning. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be part of the group, and I work for we're a family business. We're in our third generation, and Atlas Transfer is an agent for Allied Van Lines, and Oakley Relocation is an agent for North American Van Lines. So we are dual branded and based in Southern California. I actually live in Los Angeles and have an office there, but our kind of main warehouse and headquarters is in San Diego. And I've been working, when I first graduated from college, I graduated from UCLA. I did my own thing, I worked for a real estate investment company, and probably about 8 years ago, I started transitioning out of my role for my former boss and transitioned over to the family business. And it was a great transition, a great time. And the three of us, I just work with my mom and my dad. The three of us are here in Nashville for the CERVIC conference, but we do really enjoy working together. And I'm excited to represent our business. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. And with that, I will open it to the council for any comments. You guys want to give them any advice?
Welcome. Thanks for you guys joining. It's nice
Yes,
to have
well,
some-
I agree. Welcome. This is Steve Whiteycamp. I want to congratulate Sarah, and she is their company and her are strong presences in our industry, and I know she will be a good contributor to this council. So welcome, Sarah.
Thanks, Steve.
All right, with that, Anne, could you open it to public comment?
Certainly. So we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. You can click on the question mark icon, which is typically on the lower right corner of your WebEx screen or behind the three dot other options if you're on a mobile device. The other option would be to raise your hand. And if you'd like to do that, you can click on the hand icon, either at the bottom of your WebEx screen, behind the three dot other options, or for our call-in users, you can press *3 to raise your hand. Each commenter will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And if anyone has any comments for the new members, we can take that now. And I don't see any requests for public comments, so shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Anne.
You're welcome.
So we will move on to agenda item number 3. I guess just shortly before I do that, we're always looking for consumer advocates out there. If anyone knows anyone who's interested, please feel free to email me. My email is really simple. It's my first and last name, justin.paddock@dca.ca.gov. Happy to have a conversation with anyone who's interested in sort of working with the council. And with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 3. This is our public comment section. So it's essentially designed for the public to comment on anything that's not on our agenda today. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the Bureau, we ask that you not discuss the details of your case or your pending complaint at this time. But if your comments are related to a specific agenda item, you may want to actually wait until that agenda item comes up for your public comment. We will do public comment for each item moving forward. But if not, you're also welcome to speak at this time if you like. And that, I think, is it. So with that, I'll ask the council if they have anything they'd like to discuss that wasn't on the agenda today. Hearing none, Anne, would you mind opening this up to public comment?
Certainly. And if anyone has any topics that are not on the agenda that they'd like to comment about, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, and type the word comment into the text box there and click send. And the other option for everyone is to raise your hand to be recognized. And you can do that by clicking on the hand icon. It's at the bottom of the WebEx screen or behind the 3-dot other options if you're on a mobile device. And to review, if you are a call-in user, pressing *3 will raise your hand for you. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak with a 30-second warning. And I don't see any requests yet for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Jane.
You're welcome.
So with that, as I mentioned, we're going to go a little bit out of order today. So at this time, we're going to do agenda item number 8, which is our business modernization update. That's another way of saying essentially our update to our IT systems. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa Rangel, who's the DCA's Project Director for Business Modernization Cohort 2. Lisa.
Thank you, Justin. Make sure you guys can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Justin and Fauna for inviting me today to speak regarding our business modernization efforts to date. As Justin mentioned, my name is Lisa Rangel. I am with the Department of Consumer Affairs Office of Information Services, and I am the Project Director for the second cohort of the Department's Business Modernization Initiative. Today, I'd like to go over a brief overview of the Business Modernization Initiative, the California Department of Technology's project approval lifecycle, project overview status to date, high-level system functionality we can expect as we close the project itself, and then final comments. The Bureau is one of 17 programs currently undergoing the Business Modernization Initiative and is one of 5 in Cohort 2. Each program goes through an extensive business process mapping and requirements gathering with our Organizational Improvement Office. Then with the Department's Office of Information Services, proceeds through the California Department of Technology's 4 stages of the project approval lifecycle, and finally, system implementation. I would like to emphasize the Business Modernization Initiative is highly business-driven. While our Organizational Improvement Office and Office of Information Services play a role in the Business Modernization Initiative, Bureau staff have been instrumental in the level of effort and quality provided in the process thus far. It is truly the critical key to the overall project. The California Department of Technology project approval lifecycle consists of 4 key planning stages. Each is divided into gates of approval and oversight provided by California Department of Technology. The Bureau has completed all 4 key planning milestones, which consist of Stage 1, identifying the Bureau's business needs, objectives, and goals for the business modernization. Stage 2, alternatives analysis, where we performed in-depth market research, invited the vendor community to provide several demonstrations of proposed software solutions, as well as collected cost estimates for each. I would like to note that it is during this stage where the Bureau decided to formally form and participate in Cohort 2. Then, upon approval of Stage 2, we entered Stage 3, where we developed a significant amount of procurement documentation with several working sessions in partnership with the California Department of Technology's Procurement Division. Upon approval of Stage 3, the solicitation was released to the vendor community for potential proposals of system implementation services. Upon approval of Stage 3, we entered the 4th and final stage of project approval lifecycle, where the Bureau participated and evaluated the solicitation responses and negotiated with the highest scoring bidders as we finalized Stage 4 with contract award and CDT approval of Stage 4. Our project status today, we started in May of this year, and it is anticipated to be an 18-month project. We are taking an agile, iterative approach where we will release functionality to the public in phases. Our first targeted release is in December of this year. Then about every 3 to 4 months thereafter, with project target completion in fall of 2023. High-level system functionality we can expect is a cloud-based solution. In fact, it is the same solution selected by Cohort 1, and they completed their project activities in June of this year. The system has the ability to create online registrations where external users can submit applications, renewals, online complaints, online credit card payments, email and text notifications for several application and licensing milestones such as license approval, application and renewal deficiencies, online remediation of those deficiencies, and alerts for time to renew, as well as real-time application status. I would like to close with noting that there is still a lot of work to be done to make this project a success. Throughout the project, we anticipate 100% resource allocation in order to meet project milestones and keep positive momentum. With that being said, the level of commitment received from the Bureau thus far has been outstanding, and I would again like to thank Justin and Fauna for the continued support of the Business Modernization Initiative. I look forward to keeping positive momentum throughout the project, and with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is Steve Whiteycamp from the California Moving and Storage Association. Our understanding is that the household good electronic quarterly filing reports are among the very first items to be moved forward. Is that part of the December rollout?
Currently, we are targeting the priority for the household movers to be the priority number one, and as capacity permits, we will look to including the quarterly reports in the December release. If not, our second one is targeted for the fall of 2023. I'm sorry, the spring.
So Lisa, just to clarify, in the application, correct? And then the quarterly renewal would be in your second?
Correct.
Steve, did that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Any additional questions from the council? Anne, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Certainly. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment about the business modernization rollout, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box there, and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. Or you may look, if for our call-in users, you may press *3 to raise your hand, and each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lisa, thank you so much for joining us today. With that, we will move on, again, just a little bit out of order, agenda item 6A, which is our fiscal update. That actually starts on page 32 of your packet, and I'm going to hand it over to the Budget's Office, Harmony DiFilippo, to give us an update. Harmony?
Thank you, Justin, and good morning. My name is Harmony DiFilippo, and I'm one of the budget analysts with DCA. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to provide the council with an update on the budget, and I will be speaking to agenda item 6A and the documents included. So I'm going to start with the first page. Thank you. So the first one we have is the fund condition for the electronic appliance repair, or EAR. So the attached fund condition is based off of the 2022 Budget Act and includes 21-22 prior year actual revenues and expenditures, as well as out years, giving you a 5-year view. I will start with the first section, which is revenues. So EAR began 21-22 with a fund balance of $3,773,000 and collected $2,634,000 in revenues, with $416,000 from initial license fees, $2,079,000 from license renewals, and $97,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. For 22-23, the current year, EAR projects revenues at $6,091,000, with approximately $236,000 projected from the initial license fees and $2,269,000 from renewal fees, and $109,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenue. You will notice that revenue is projected slightly higher in budget year and static in the out years. The next section is the 22-23 current year expenditures, and they are projected in full based off of the Budget Act at $3,722,000, which will be updated throughout the year based on the fiscal month projections. We include a 3% growth factor in out years on the fund condition, and this will be the same for all three fund conditions I discussed today. To capture any future cost increases based on annual incremental adjustments like retirement, GSIs, and things like that. This fund condition also includes anticipated business modernization costs, BizMod, in budget year and ongoing. Please note, these are just an estimate and may change. To the extent the Bureau does not fully expend its appropriation, any savings remain in the Bureau's fund, which help the reserve balance. So as stated, if the Bureau doesn't fully extend its appropriation, that will help change the future negative fund balance. The Bureau notes, future legislation or other events could require the Bureau to request additional resources through the annual budget process, which would increase cost pressures to the fund. The last section is the fund balance reserve, and this is the amount of funds remaining at the end of any given fiscal year. The Bureau's fund has a statutory fund balance limit of 24 months, but typically 3 to 6 months is considered sufficient. Some of this information is going to prevent repetitiveness. Some of this will be the same as I go through each of those fund conditions, so I may not speak to every detail. The next one we have is the fund condition for home furnishings and thermal insulation, or HEFTI. The attached fund condition statement is based off of the 22 Budget Act and includes 21-22 prior actuals, revenues, and expenditures, as well as out years, giving you a 5-year view. So again, I'm going to start with the first section on revenues. So HEFTI began 21-22 with a fund balance of $6,058,000 and collected $5,672,000 in revenues, with $937,000 for initial license fees, $4,337,000 from license renewals, and $97,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. For 22-23 current year, HEFTI projects revenues at $5,183,000, with approximately $971,000 projected from the initial license fees and $3,905,000 from renewal fees, and $307,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. You will notice that the revenue is again projected slightly higher in budget year and static in the out years. The next section is expenditures. Again, so for 22-23 current year, the expenditures are projected in full based off the Budget Act at the $5,895,000, which will be updated throughout the year based off of those fiscal month projections. And again, the last section is the fund balance reserve. Next, we will move on to the fund condition for household movers, or HHM. Again, the attached fund condition is based off of the 22 Budget Act. It includes prior year actuals and revenues and expenditures, as well as that 5-year view. HHM began 21-22 with a fund balance of $5,062,000 and collected $4,224,000 in revenues, $87,000 from initial license fees, and $3,932,000 from license renewals, and $205,000 was collected from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquent fees, and other revenues. For current year, HHM projects revenues at $3,860,000, with approximately $103,000 projected from the initial license fees, $3,435,000 from renewal fees, and $321,000 from the issuance of citations, fines, delinquents, fees, and other revenues. And again, you'll notice that the revenue is projected higher in budget year and static in the out years. This fund condition also includes a revenue transfer to the Motor Carrier Safety Improvement Fund for current year. And next is your expenditures. For current year, the expenditures are again projected in full based off of the Budget Act at $3,651,000, which will be updated throughout the year based off of the fiscal month projections. Last, we have the fund balance reserve. We do not have any concerns with any of the funds at this time, and we will continue to monitor the budget and provide monthly updates to the Bureau. I would also like to note that these fund conditions do not include any updated revenues that the Bureau has recently provided to the Budget Office. These updates will be included in the upcoming Governor's budget release. And that concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Harmony. And Steve, I see your hand. Before we call on the council, I just wanted to give one note to reiterate something Harmony mentioned about the business modernization fees. I just wanted to quickly compare. If you see on your screen right now, the months in reserve for fiscal year 21-22 are 22 months in reserve. We last reported that to you as 29.1. So after we start cutting these checks, you're going to start seeing these numbers for HHM go down. That was the only thing I wanted to reiterate. Our out years have also gone down. You'll see for budget year 24-25, we're reporting at the moment 24, my eyes are failing me, 24.6, I believe. And last time we reported to you, that was actually 34.6. So they are coming down now that we're starting to cut checks for updating the IT system. So with that, I'll open it up to council comments. Steve.
Thank you, Steve Whiteycamp, California Moving and Storage Association. Yeah, that was my first question, how those reserves dropped that quickly from our last meeting. The second question, Harmony, was, can you show me where on here the fines, the assessed fines are noted?
Yes, so if you scroll up to the revenue section, please. Okay, so there's several sections within that capture cite and fines, and so they're actually grouped in with other sources of income, and that would be in your other regulatory fees.
Okay, so our delinquency fees are greater than our fines fees, which when I looked, if my memory serves me right, we received a report that annually that was about $100,000 for the last 12 months. So we had $131,000 in delinquent permitting.
So for current year, that's a projected number for the delinquent fees. Excuse me. And Karen, do you have any insight you can share on that?
Hi, yeah, just quick check. You guys can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, my name's Karen Munoz. I'm the budget manager. I have just a quick insight on this. These documents that you're looking at on the fund condition statement, there's a lot of things that roll up to like a delinquent fees or renewal fees, other regulatory fees. But like, so it would be, there's other things that may happen. For delinquent fees, it is definitely just delinquent fees. And as Harmony has stated, the 131 for current year is projected. It may decrease. We are also in the process of updating our current year and budget year ongoing revenue sources. So the based on Bureau projection and prior year trends or future changes, that number may change. We just showed you what you're seeing in the Budget Act on Finance's website. But your delinquent fees would fall within that 21,200 first category for revenue. But like Harmony has stated, current year is just projected. It's what we show on finance's website, and those numbers, current year and budget year, will be changing based on the Bureau's feedback that they just recently provided us.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And while I don't think that this comment is specifically for budgetary staff, I think for the general staff of the Bureau, that number is too high, and anything that we as a council can do to ensure that permitted carriers and other parties are advised so that they don't let those things lapse and incur those delinquency fees. I think that would be a good step for us moving forward.
Before I move on to other council comments, just to address some items Steve raised. Steve, for our fiscal updates in 2023, if you'd like, we can make sure that we're actually calling out delinquency fees and our citation fees. We can collect those and just make sure we're reporting specifically if you'd like that.
Thank you.
And then the other comment that staff's just not going to like that I'm going to make, but I'm going to make it anyway just to make it abundantly clear. Our HHM enforcement reg is why that number on citation fees is lower than I'd like it to be. That's actually a priority for the Bureau. We've been working great the last couple months with DCA to get our HHM enforcement reg out there. Again, I don't want to make promises in this meeting. I really, really want to see that reg take effect before the next moving season. So we're aiming for an April 1st effective date for that regulation at this time. And I'll certainly keep you posted when that regulation takes effect. With that, though, I know we have some other hands. I believe Bert was next.
Yeah, excuse me, Harmony. Just a question for you. When we talk about the out years, if you look, you say basically 3 to 6 months should be sufficient on the fund reserve balance. If you look at the out years for the 3 different areas, one's very strong, one's the bear is in the hole the last year, and HIFT has less than 3 months. What does that really mean? Are we going to get more money in? If you clear up the confusion for me.
So Bert, I'll speak to it, and then Harmony, clean up if I make any mistakes here. So essentially, Diana Godinez later in our meeting today is going to give you an update on the CPSHR fund study that we're hoping to have complete by the end of this month. In essence, I think that there are going to be certain fees that are going to have to be adjusted. I think EAR is certainly one of them. However, in addition to that, Harmony mentioned earlier on, we have something called a reversion, which we've discussed, which is just because my budget is allocated for a certain amount, we don't always spend that full amount. But when we're projecting out years, we never plan for that. We always assume I'm going to spend every single cent. But again, much to many people's chagrin, I try to actually come way under what my allocation is. And so you will see a reversion consistently for both EAR and for HUFTE. Again, it's an imperfect science when you're actually trying to project a budget just like a business is. But I think we have mild concern at this time for the fund condition for EAR, and we're certainly focusing and looking at that. We have less concern, obviously, for HUFTE. You are seeing a decline in the out years, but again, as long as I don't spend my full budget every year, it's a slower decline than is projected at the moment. And then with HHM, it's just the opposite. I'm actually finally starting to spend money on projects that we already had in the pipeline. So you're actually seeing that come down as opposed to up. Harmony, anything you'd add?
Thank you.
No, and actually, I think I will see if Karen has anything to add, but I think that you answered the question.
Yeah, I can. This is Karen. I can concur with Justin that it is everything that you're seeing in out years, especially in the expenditure side, includes includes a 3% growth. So we project full budget and a 3% growth in out years. That's not always the case. And as Justin stated, there's always a reversion within the Bureau's funds. They're very cautious about the expenditures that they make. And so there is no concern. So when you're looking at Bear's fund and you see that negative balance in out years, once we get actual, that number will change. Once we start working on projections for the current fiscal year and that current budget that we're seeing in the current year drops a little bit, you're going to see that negative either decrease or become a positive in out years. And also, as Justin alluded to, if he's working on a fee study to see if there's anything else that needs to be done, where the funds actually should be appropriated at, and things like that. And so there are plans in motion, or there's a lot of movement where Justin is working with the budget office to assure that the appropriations are spent where they need to be, and we don't see any concerns in the out years. Revenue is also projected static, and as we know, we see increases in a lot of licensees moving forward. So when revenues come in and the expenditures drop, those any funds that we see in a low reserve level will definitely increase. So we'll see a negative turn into a positive once we update those revenue projections and we find those savings within expenditures. And in the funds that are showing a really higher reserve, I believe Hefty is more moderate, so they're pretty good. But with household movers, with that moving into the department, we're still, with the first couple of years, it was hiring of the positions and getting all of the growth moving from there, and that's why they had that higher reserve. And so, as Justin stated, with all these costs coming out of the household movers funds now, you're going to see that reserve level drop to a more normal balance, you'll say. So 12 months is actually still not bad. Some programs like to see a 12-month reserve. The average is 3 to 6.
So basically, we're fiscally sound, the Bureau is.
I would say that it's fiscally sound and no concerns.
So, Bert, the only thing I would add is I have some concerns about the EAR budget, but when it comes to Hefty or HHM, I do not have concerns. And we're working on that report as we speak.
Thank you.
And I think, Tom, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, hey, the new guys. So just some line item questions. I think we're on HHM right now. I was curious why the drop from prior year to current year under the renewal fees. Is that just a conservative forecasting? So from 3.9 to 3.4.
Yeah, so again, the current year and out years, those are all projected.
Yep.
Based off of our workload revenue. So sometimes the revenue can come in higher or lower than projected. So it's a maybe more conservative projection. However, as Karen had stated, we are still working on making updates. And so for current year, so the next maybe the next Bureau or Council meeting, you might see some additional changes to that. This is just based off of the Budget Act at this time and those projections that were put together last year.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my question on EAR. I was wondering about those initial licenses because they dropped from just over 4 to I think 216. I'm guessing that's probably the same concept then.
Yeah, it is fluid as far as
236. Yeah. Okay, thank you. That helps.
Of course.
And just to add, Tom, I never like to be rosy about my projections. I'd rather be wrong. Again, you're going to see fluctuations just based on how the economy is going for all three of those industries. But I'd rather be wrong on the low end and then have more revenue.
No, I'm with
Any
you. I totally get it, having been forecasting for many, many years. So you want to come in, you want to over deliver, right? So thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from the council? With that, Ann, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment on the budget report, you can look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen. Click on that, type comment in the text box and click send. And the other option for everyone is that you can raise your hand to be recognized by clicking on the hand icon. And that might be, if you're on a mobile device, that might be behind the three-dot other options. And call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Ann.
You're welcome.
All right, we are going to move on to agenda item number 4, which is our review of the Advisory Council meeting minutes. Those are actually on page 16 of your packet is where it starts. We'll sort of give everyone a minute just to flip to that page in their packet. And with that, I would like to ask if any of the council members have any revisions, additions, we got something wrong, or inclusions for the minutes. Bert, I see your camera on. Did you have a comment? Tom.
Just a nit. I noticed under the, and by the way, I'll recuse myself from approving these minutes, not having been there. I noticed under the CPS fee study, it's just policy manager. It says manger right now. It's ticky tack. So.
In which page? I'm sorry.
Page 22 at the bottom, first sentence.
Thank you. Any other comments from the council? Not seeing any hands, so with that, Ann, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Of course. And if you've got any comments on the minutes, you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. Or you can raise your hand to ask to be recognized by clicking on the hand icon, and that might be behind the three-dot other options if you are on a mobile device, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands, and each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, thank you, Ed.
You bet.
All right, with that, we will certainly make sure we make our update to the minutes, and we will finalize that and post that on our website. Typically, for our minutes, if we don't have any revisions, it just remains in the meeting materials packet. But what we'll actually do is you'll see a new link in the next week or so on the website just for the meeting minutes specifically, and that's because we'll be making that update. So I appreciate it. Thanks, Tom. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 5, which is our public outreach plan, which is on page 26. Just by way of background, the purpose of this...
Oh. Did you need to vote to approve the minutes?
Actually, for the advisory councils, we don't need to take a vote.
Thank you.
We basically just take feedback.
Thank you.
Yeah. So with that, on the outreach plan, page 26, This plan is intended to be our design in 2023 of how we're going to meet communication education goals that we set as part of our discussion earlier this year in the strategic planning process. Just for ease of access, we threw the goals up on this first slide for your reference. And actually, when we get back to the discussion, after I sort of run through all of these items, we're going to throw it back up there again. Just for council comment and public comment, just so you can have these goals in the back of your mind as you're reviewing this plan. I also plan to go through each section and ask for comment, which is going to be the generalized outreach, industry-focused outreach, education-focused, state agency, licensing, enforcement, and lastly, social media. Again, if I'm not getting a lot of comments, then I'll just to keep things moving, I'll just wait to the end. But I figured I'd break it up so that people can provide feedback for each item. So with that, I will turn to page 27, which is our generalized outreach. With that, we're going to take several approaches to generalized outreach over the coming year, one of which was thanks to a proposal by Councilmember Burt Grimes. We are going to be going to several county fair events throughout the state of California. We're going to see how many we can line up. Actually, a former Bureau employee is going to be returning to us, Dale Chase. He actually has experience with county fair activities, and so he's actually going to be lining up the logistics. And several special investigators within the Bureau are going to be attending events. We're also looking to partner with DCA, so you would probably also see DCA staff that'll be coming to the event with us. Just to provide more generalized outreach for anyone who has a consumer issue, whether it's something under our bailiwick or under someone else's. In addition, we're going to continue. We actually did 2 senior scam stopper events this year. We're going to expand that next year for our special investigators. The Contractor State License Board does many of these events, and we're essentially going to be joining them throughout the state. These are held in legislative districts throughout the year. As part of our generalized outreach, we're also going to have our special investigators at the end of each year. They actually come to Northern California just to follow up and plan for next year and do some training. One of the trainings that we're going to be doing is working them through the application process. Our special investigators are very familiar with our laws. They certainly know what they can cite for, but I also want them to make sure that they get a training on the application process. What are the frustrations that applicants have? What are the questions people may have about the renewal process? So our licensing manager and several of her staff are going to be providing them a training at the end of this year so that special investigators can actually speak to those at these events. With that, any council comment on our generalized outreach? Pascal.
Thank you, Justin. So on the outreach, I know in the past there was some budgetary and other challenges for the Bureau to potentially go outside of California to some trade events. For example, a High Point in North Carolina on the furnishing side, or Las Vegas for market. Does the Bureau still have impediments and challenges to going outside California?
I would say yes and no. I certainly can make requests. I would say fiscally, it's not problematic. I just try to minimize our costs, and usually our costs are substantial when we go out of state. But with that being said, this is a good opportunity for the council to make recommendations to me of outside events that they're aware of in 2023 that I should try to actually plan for. For example, just the fact that you have me as a chief, anytime I go to Southern California, you don't have to spend a lot of money. I have family I stay with, so there's no hotel costs, for example. I'm just always hesitant to spend money when I don't need to. But with that being said, Pascal, do you have certain events in mind that you'd like us to look at?
I would, for the home furnishing side, I would suggest there are 2 markets in Las Vegas. One is typically end of January, and the other one is typically end of July of each year. And then for High Point, I know this year, for example, it's in October, and generally there'll be October and April of each year. And High Point
Got
is
it.
in North Carolina. Yeah.
And I did attend that event in my previous role here.
Yeah, but I don't think you need to do both. I think you can probably pick one and out of the four. And I would suggest Las Vegas, which is obviously closer and maybe easier to travel. And between January and July, it's sometimes January is better attended than July. It just depends on the year, but generally speaking, I think January is better attended.
Just speaking personally, I think I'd like to shoot for the January one myself.
Yeah, being in a suit in July in Las Vegas is not fun.
Yeah. With that, just before we move on to other council comment, are there other events that the council would just like to sort of have us take a look at that fall outside the state of California? Okay, with that, I'll just open it up. Does the council have any other comments on the Generalized Outreach Plan?
Yeah, Justin, Steve Whiteycamp, California Moving and Storage Association. For generalized outreach in an area that doesn't really going to incur any costs, I sit as the lead on the National Enforcement Task Force for the ATA Moving and Storage Conference. And we recently had a program that included AARP and the National Crime Prevention Council, both of whom put out a lot of good information. And if your group is not already exposed to those people or they're not exposed to you, I think that that is a great opportunity to get the word out to both seniors and the public in general.
Thank you, Steve. I got most of my notes, but National Enforcement Task Force, can you finish that off for me one more time? Sorry.
Yeah, the National Enforcement Task Force is part of the ATA MSC. I sit as the lead of that group. But the outreach would be to the National Crime Prevention Council, like that's McGruff, the crime dog, and to the AARP, both of whom put on videos and do outreach to consumers on the AARP, people over 50.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. Any other council member comments? With that, Ann, could you open it to public comment?
Certainly. We're opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. You can look for the question mark icon in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, type the word comment, and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in user can press *3 to raise their hand, and people will be given 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, we'll turn to industry-focused outreach. This is probably the last one where I'll do the individual comment. I think the other ones will go fairly faster, and then I'll just ask for comment at the end. But if the council disagrees, just raise your hand. I'll stop. But on the industry-focused outreach, part of this is actually devoted to trying to reach out to individuals that I actually worked with when I was at the Bureau before. One interesting thing to note under electronic appliance repair, we used to have the PSOC, which is a professional services organization of California. It looks like that website's out of order. I've called a few of the members. It looks like they have essentially disbanded. But through some searching and talking with some industry members, I do plan to reach out to what's called the United Appliance Servicers Association and see if there's opportunities to speak at their conferences or just have discussions with their members remotely. So that's one area in the electronic appliance repair. And I'll stop actually right here. Tom, do you have some other suggestions for your?
Yeah, just that, thank you very much. There might be an opportunity too for the Service Contract Industry Council to do the same. We
Okay.
have
Do you
a
guys
few
have a
members. What's that?
do you have a conference coming up or?
Yes, it's actually next week.
Okay.
But 2023 would normally be, it's perennially in Las Vegas, I understand, typically October. But I did make some notes. I mean, there's that opportunity possibly to speak and then, get to know some of our membership. And then to the extent we would want to put something on, virtually, we could do that too. It depends a bit about the objective, but thought we could take that offline and talk more about it. Thank you.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thanks, Tom. With that, I'll keep going. With regards to home furnishings, this actually, I believe, was a bit of a reference by Pascal, but just several associations that the Bureau has had great relationships with in the past, so we certainly want to reach out again. One of those is essentially the Home Furnishings Association, as well as the American Home Furnishings Alliance. And then in addition to that, we'll continue, as I have been, participating in the quarterly calls for the Green Science Policy Institute. And then moving on to household movers, Yafana Lamar and I certainly enjoyed speaking with several of the members of the California Movers and Storage Association in Reno, Nevada this year. We plan to continue to participate. It looks like they're looking for the desert again. So we'll be going down south in 2023 for that meeting. In addition to that, I want to thank Steve myself because he's actually opened several doors for us with the National Association. So we'll be exploring opportunities to talk there as well regarding interstate issues. And with that, I will, let's see. Oh, I'm sorry. In addition to that, we're also looking for doing a release in May. This last May, we were looking to quickly do a release because May is National Movers Month. We've actually prepared a video. Steve has given us some good feedback. I actually plan to also reach out to Councilmember Oakley to watch the video. And once we've essentially finalized that, that actually would be part of an event that we will do this coming spring to actually, just in coordination with National Moving Month, to be able to give several publications as well as release the video and have a talk about what consumers should look for in their movers, how they can pick their mover, what to expect on moving day, and if the worst happens, sort of how they can deal with it in the aftermath. With that, I will open it to the council for any council comment on our industry-focused outreach. Not seeing any hands. So for industry outreach, we'll open it to public comment.
Thank you. And we are opening up WebEx's Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. You can look for the question mark in the bottom right of your screen, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon at the bottom of your screen or behind the three-dot other options, or you can raise our calling user can raise their hand by pressing *3. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, council members, if you'd like to raise your hand, as I'm going to run through a few of these all at the same time, which is going to be education, state agency, licensing, enforcement, and then I'll open it again to comment just on those. And then I'll take sort of social media as the last. You'll be able to laugh at me at my inexperience with social media, but I will do my best. So with that, just turning to education-focused outreach. Once upon a time, when I was the chief here, I actually spoke annually at the graduating class at Los Medanos College for their electronic repair as well as their appliance repair shop. They have a slightly different program now, but I do plan to reach out to them late this year to see if there's opportunities for me to talk with faculty as well as students in what's called their Department of Electrical and Instrumentation Technology, which does encapsulate some of the programs that I was familiar with in the past. In addition, I've reached out to several of my contacts within the California Community College system, and I was happy to see Palomar College actually has a case furniture construction and manufacturing degree that they offer. So I plan to visit that college, the faculty, and visit with the students to just get a better understanding of what their career goals are, where they're headed. And finally, I plan next year to attend the California Community College Association's Occupational Education Conference, which occurs in the fall of every year. With that, those are sort of the education-focused items that we're going to be working on. Next, I'll move over to state agency outreach. The premier one here is we plan to meet with the California Highway Patrol, sort of their legislative affairs team. In the coming months, we're going to reach out to them. We're going to be exploring quite a few things, one of which is the Vehicle Code's Omnibus bill this year actually created quite a few updates to the Vehicle Code. And we just want to see if we can do any sort of Q&A with the CHP with regard to sort of their stopping of movers of late, just to see if there's any questions that they have, any concerns that they have, just so we can try to work that out. I see Steve turned his video on with a thumbs up. Steve, we'll keep you posted on that one. In addition to that, I'd like to speak with them just about opportunities to, on various days, visit weigh stations. I think one of the great ways that we can deal with unlicensed activity throughout the state of California is to actually catch some of these movers at the scales. There may be logistical issues with that. So again, I don't want to promise that we'll be doing that, but we certainly do want to explore that with the CHP, get their opinion on it, and see if that's a possibility to address unlicensed activity. So that's going to be another area that we're going to explore with the CHP. In addition, the department actually recently had what was called a lunch brown bag session with the Division of Apprenticeship Standards. And I was actually really interested in some of the items that they had to say. So we're actually going to be exploring with their staff funding opportunities that employers have for bringing on apprentices. There's in the electronic space, especially, as well as the appliance space, a lot of people are complaining that it's hard to really get new staff. And so if there's an opportunity to work with associations and see if there's actual government assistance out there through the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, we do want to offer that. So that's an additional thing that we're going to be looking at. And that can also be for the household movers and the home furnishing space as well. And then finally, we're going to continue working with the Department of Motor Vehicles and the Bureau of Automotive Repair to assess ignition interlock device implementation through the state, as well as doing a state-to-state comparison. I'm going to speak more to that later in the agenda, but I at least wanted to mention it in our outreach as well for our state agencies. Next, I'll turn to licensing. We plan through the business modernization releases, we plan to provide a video as well as sort of an FAQ for how you apply online. So as applications and as renewals get released for each of the programs, we plan to have our licensing staff work with the public affairs staff to create quick videos on tips and tricks about how to create your account, some of the screens that you're going to be seeing, what paperwork you should have in order before you start your application process, just to be helpful for various consumers. For various potential applicants, as well as licensees who are trying to renew. And again, we are going to time those based on the release from business modernization. So as software gets put on our website, we'll work immediately on a video for that particular material. And that'll be, I can't promise what delivery dates will be. It also will depend on sort of the bandwidth of DCA's public affairs staff, who is helping us, as well as many other programs, create video content. With that, I'll turn over to our enforcement-focused outreach. We're going to create several videos similar to what I've described for household movers, which is, how to select a business, sort of what you should expect in the relationship and in the transaction with that licensee, and if the worst happens, what you can do next. With some FAQs. The policy unit and myself will be working on those materials. We actually have existing material for most of the practice acts. It's just a matter of updating them with new legislation, new requirements, things of that nature. Excuse me. We also plan to continue to attend San Diego County's quarterly consumer fraud task force meetings. We find those to be incredibly valuable, and we're going to be reaching out to other counties to see if there's additional task force. Historically, I've worked at the Department of Consumer Affairs for about 10 years, and in past positions, I know that Shasta County had a similar task force. We're going to be looking throughout the state just to see if there are other task forces that we can participate in, ideally virtually, but if not, we'll certainly attend in person as well. And finally, this February, which is when we get to the setting our meeting dates, I'm actually going to ask that we set a meeting date in January rather than February this year. I'll be speaking at the California District Attorneys Association Fraud Symposium. And we'll be talking, we're going to try to get them excited, and I think we'll succeed about dealing with complaints throughout all three of our practice acts. And I'll be speaking at that event, as well as our enforcement staff will be providing some Q&A as well. And with that, I will stop for a moment. I spoke a lot. I need to take a drink of water, obviously, and we'll open it to council comment. I don't see any hands raised. Anne, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Of course, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you would like to give input on the outreach steps outlined, you can look for the question mark icon in the lower right corner of your WebEx screen, type the word comment in the text box and click send. And the other option is always to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or our calling user can press *3 to raise your hand. And we do have a comment from someone logged into WebEx as Tom Dykstra. I'm going to send you a request to unmute your microphone so that you can make your comment. And Tom, you should have gotten a pop-up prompt on your computer screen. And it looks like Tom may be having problems unmuting himself. He did type in a comment that he suggested, he said he missed earlier opportunity to comment on outreach. Please consider adding BIFMA to your list of industry associations to contact.
Tom, I am happy to. You're absolutely right. I'm going to include BIFMA on our list, and I believe you already have our draft law label regulations, but correct me if I'm wrong if I didn't send that to you, and happy to talk further.
And I do not see any other requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, last but not least, and yours truly will now be very much out of his depth. We are looking at doing social media outreach. I promise you it will not be me. We actually are going to have our licensing unit look at this with our public affairs staff. And we're going to be doing two things, one of which is we're going to create a Facebook page. And we actually had one in the past, but we're actually going to just reinvigorate it, as well as we're looking at a Twitter account. A couple of things would get posted regularly. At least once or twice a month, we would do application processing times. So various consumers or applicants just sort of have an idea of what the overall turnaround time is. So for example, if I'm a service dealer, when can I expect to get my license if I submitted last week? And again, if I'm a household mover, it's certainly not going to be a week turnaround just because of the way the process works. But just sort of expectations. That it goes without saying, obviously, we're still going to answer calls. Anyone who has a particular question about their application, we're happy to take it. It's just sort of a reference material. In addition, we're going to do a little bit of public square shaming. When we have large chains, retail chains, considered delinquent on payments, we're actually going to be publishing that online. I actually need to work with Michael Knotz, our legal counsel, who's here today, on how I can phrase that. But essentially, we just be notifying that a particular retail chain is delinquent on their license. And then once they actually come into compliance again, we would remove the posting. In addition, we'd include enforcement actions such as our citation data. We would place that and then just give a link to where you can find it on our website, and any other disciplinary actions that we take. Finally, we would do a Q&A for consumers, licensees, and applicants. It's going to be our strong preference to do those privately. Through Twitter, you can do DMs, which are considered direct messages. So we're going to do our best to sort of do Q&A with individuals who may just prefer not to use the phone through private messaging. But we do expect at times we'll get public comments. The minute we get a public comment about a particular issue, we'll make sure that we reach out to that individual right away, see if we can address their issue privately. If not, we'll do our best to resolve it working with our counsel on what we can and can't say through our public social media profile. With that, any questions on social media from the council? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Anna, would you mind opening this to public comment?
Yeah, Justin, this is Don Lucas. I had my hand raised, but I didn't know if you could see it or not.
Go on.
Okay. I think it's great that you're doing all of this, and my only suggestion is that you expand beyond Facebook and Twitter, especially for when you're producing videos. You might as well put them on, TikTok and YouTube and wherever you can do it, because that's pretty easy. And I'm glad you and I aren't going to be doing this ourselves. So good job.
That's a good suggestion. The video content we do make is posted on YouTube. For example, our council meeting today is a link available on YouTube. And when you access our links later, so for example, if you want to go watch our June meeting, you would see when you clicked on that link on our website, it would take you to a YouTube website. But TikTok's a good point. I'm certainly hearing more and more about it in my house. I'm not very familiar with it, but I guess I need to fix that. Any other comments from the council? With that, Anna, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Certainly, and we've opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. If you have any comment on the social media outreach outlined, you can click on a question mark, type the word comment into the text box, and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, which is either at the bottom of your WebEx computer screen or behind the three other options if you are on a mobile device. Or a call-in user can press *3 to raise their hand, and each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And everyone, I apologize. I meant to have sort of this slide up just so that everyone can sort of reflect on what we've covered so far on the outreach plan. I'm just going to give an opportunity just to have this slide up again. This is going through the strategic objectives this plan is supposed to meet, 3.1 through 3.7. And so I'll just open it up to comment one more time with just this on the screen. With these strategic objectives in mind, any additional comments on the outreach plan from the council? I'll just give you a minute to look. And before I open it to public comment, I also just wanted to briefly talk about, or actually have someone else talk about, outreach that the Bureau is doing that isn't covered by this plan, which is our sort of our day-to-day outreach that we're doing with our licensees. With that, I'd like to ask Alda just sort of briefly to summarize sort of our day-to-day outreach interactions.
Good morning. Thank you, Justin. For our day-to-day outreach, our outreach is performed by our field staff. Field staff go out into the community and provide information to home furnishing and thermal insulation businesses, electronic and appliance repair businesses, and household moving businesses. We conduct visits for all three programs. These visits include inspecting labels, reviewing invoices, answering questions, and assisting businesses with using our website to find information. We also meet with businesses when we find that there's been an increase in the number of complaints to assist them by providing education. For example, this last week, we met with a household mover whose business had grown over the last couple years. We discussed the complaint trend for their business, the issues we had concerns with. During our meeting, we reviewed their moving process and discussed their communication with consumers. We then reviewed the tariff and the Household Mover Act to discuss areas that could be improved. At the conclusion of our meeting, we provided the business with an inspection report highlighting the areas we discussed and followed up with an email providing additional information and resources. Visits and meetings like this are being performed by our field staff throughout California. Thank you.
Thank you, Alda. And just one last time for the council, if you have any comments. And Anne, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Certainly, and we've opened the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. You can look for the question mark icon and type the word comment and click send, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand, and each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
So we will move to our next item. Again, we already did 6A, which is our fiscal update, but I'm going to be turning our meeting over to Kelly Williams, our admin manager, to discuss our administrative update. I would also ask you reference page 36. Those are the strategic objectives for this particular area of our Bureau. With that, Kelly.
Thank you, Justin. My name is Kelly Williams. I'm the administrative manager and will be giving you an update on staffing changes at the Bureau of Household Goods and Services. Here's a synopsis of hiring by unit. Starting with the licensing unit, at the June 2022 Advisory Council meeting, the licensing unit had 5 vacant positions and is now considered fully staffed. We've hired 2 analysts, a program technician, and an office technician. The remaining position is a limited term office technician position, which is on hold. The administrative unit is also fully staffed. The last position, which was the contracts and procurement analyst, was filled in July. Moving on to the laboratory unit, the environmental scientist position was filled in July. This leaves 2 textile technicians and 1 office technician vacancy to be filled. These vacancies are under review to determine if these positions should be reclassed. The next unit to be discussed is the compliance unit. Our new compliance unit manager, Shelby Nordman, will be interviewing for 3 vacant positions in her unit in the next 2 weeks. The original final filing date to apply for these positions was in August. However, a decision was made to extend the posting until October to obtain a larger candidate pool. We anticipate these positions will be filled by the end of the year. Regarding the special investigator positions, please note that these individuals undergo a detailed background check. For our recent hire, the process took about 90 days. This is because the Bureau has enhanced special investigators' abilities to protect the public by providing them with two types of notifications that require individuals to appear in court. This increased level of responsibility requires an in-depth background check completed by DCA's Division of Investigation. On July 1st, which is the beginning of our fiscal year, the Bureau received 4 additional special investigator positions resulting from a budget change proposal. These positions will be split between the Northern and Southern California investigative units. As of the June Advisory Council meeting, the Northern California Special Investigations team had 5 vacant positions. The Bureau has filled 3 of these positions. The remaining 2 positions were reposted along with the 2 new positions acquired from the budget change proposal on July 1st. Interviews for these 4 positions will take place next week. At the last Advisory Council meeting, the Southern California Investigations Unit team had 1 vacant position, which resulted from a retirement. Interviews for this position and the 2 new positions received on July 1st have been completed. Conditional employment offers have been made to 3 candidates. These candidates are undergoing background checks. Enforcement support has 2 vacant analyst positions. Chief Paddock and I met with the Department of Consumer Affairs Human Resources last week to finalize a proposal to update our Bureau's organizational structure and make alterations to these positions and a few others to ensure quicker recruitments in the future. Based on that meeting, I'm finalizing the proposal and now plan to submit it to DCA's Human Resources for formal review early next week. Does the council have any questions?
Thank you. Yes, Steve Whiteycamp. So what is the current number of special investigators?
The current number?
Yes.
Let me see. I'm counting 12. Alden, Nicole, correct me if that's incorrect. 12, and then we have 1 inspector and 1 field representative. Are you talking positions or positions that are filled?
Filled.
Filled 12.
And that includes supervisors?
No, 14 with the supervisors and 15 if you include the supervising special investigator too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And are there any public comments before we move on to the next topic?
We've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you've got a comment about this report, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will be prompted to unmute themselves and will be given 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. With that,
next, I'll move on. I'm going to provide information on the administrative team's contribution to the organizational development section of the Bureau's strategic plan. And these are objectives 5.1 through 0.55. Under the organizational development, the goal is to provide effective leadership and improve the quality of services in all program areas. The five areas were identified to help us reach the goal:
The first item is 5.1, which is to implement effective staff recruitment, including updating candidate evaluation criteria to improve recruitment and retention of qualified staff. The administration team has collaborated with the managers and the DCA Office of Human Resources to refine candidate selection criteria and improve employment testing. After each recruitment, we will be surveying the managers at the 6-month mark to determine if the recruitment was effective and ask for feedback on actions that the Bureau can take to positively impact employee retention. After new staff have been on board for 60 days, admin will survey them to determine what worked well with the onboarding process and what can be improved. We'll then incorporate feedback into our onboarding process. Item number 5.2 is to identify and implement creative ways to attract an increased number of qualified applicants. To date, the administration's team's resources have been utilized to fill vacant positions and work on policies and procedures. We're in the planning stage of creating a recruitment plan. Our personnel liaison has observed a couple of recruitment presentations from other agencies to get an idea of what other agencies are doing. The Department of Consumer Affairs is also doing some recruiting events. We're going to see if we can join them and if they have materials that we can use for our own recruiting events. We plan to add job openings to the Bureau's website and also leverage social media. The Bureau is also looking to post certain positions in the Capital Morning Reports classified section and on LinkedIn. Recently, the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers took this step and as a result received many more applications for those positions. Once we have explored all options, we will create a written plan. The next section is 5.3, which is to increase the speed in which staff vacancies are filled, reducing the Bureau's staff vacancy rate to less than 10%. Filling vacant positions with qualified candidates has been admin's top priority. We've filled 11 positions since April and have 10 positions in the process of being filled. We have increased the speed to fill vacant positions by screening applications prior to the job closing date so that interviews can be conducted as soon as the posting closes. As soon as we're aware of an upcoming vacancy, the hiring packet is prepared. The administration team is assisting managers by scheduling interviews, helping to prepare for interviews, and facilitating candidate testing. We're also creating tools such as forms and templates to increase the accuracy and efficiency of hiring. The next section is 5.4, which is to create a comprehensive Bureau training plan to initiate long-term succession planning. In addition to the management team, experienced staff are helping new staff with training and onboarding. All teams are working on updating or creating procedures. The Bureau is analyzing the organizational structure to identify future business needs and then creating plans to fill those needs. The last section is 5.5, which is to facilitate staff team building to increase collaboration and improve morale among staff. Admin will be conducting a quarterly Welcome to My World event where each team does a series of presentations on their job tasks and responsibilities for new staff. This helps new staff to connect the dots and understand how each team contributes to the Bureau's mission. It also provides an opportunity for staff to interact with each other and build relationships. We're also doing Bureau potlucks. We're sending emails to the Bureau to introduce new staff. And we're also working on a Bureau end of the year celebration. Does the council have any questions? Does the public have any questions?
We are opening up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. If anyone has any comments on the Administrative Services report, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. We'll now switch over to Jacqueline Castro to give us our licensing update. The licensing update starts on page 38 and the strategic objectives are on page 39. Jacqueline. Jacqueline, it looks like you're still muted.
My apologies. Hello, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Castro. I am the licensing manager for the Bureau. I will be reporting on the licensing statistics for the last 3 months, starting on page 38. Within electronic and appliance repair registrations, there was a small decrease in the first 3 license types. This was due to a few cancellations and delinquent licenses. The Bureau continues to mail delinquency notices to licensees, which also aids in providing the licensee an opportunity to notify the Bureau if they are no longer in business. You will also note that there was an increase in service contract seller registrations. This was largely due to large businesses such as New Singular Wireless opening more store locations. Within home furnishings and thermal insulation licenses, there was a slight increase in almost all license types. Within household movers, there was an increase in the amount of permits issued in the 4th quarter, while there was a slight decrease in the exam passing rate due to a high number of exam fails. The overall exam pass rate is still within 90%. There continues to be a steady increase in the total revenue collected as outstanding revenue is received. Does the council have any questions regarding the statistics?
Tom Keepers here. I just wanted to commend you for anticipating the question and explaining the number of service contract sellers. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Do we now open that to public comment?
Certainly, and we're opening the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment on this licensing report. If you have any comments, you can click the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Each commenter will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I will now provide an update on the licensing strategic objectives 1.1 through 1.4 found on page 39. Strategic Plan 1.1, establishing licensing processes and procedures to streamline workflow. The licensing unit has examined previous processes for Ear and Hefty and developed a current process which includes a delinquency procedure to ensure timely processing of licensing delinquencies. This involves licensing taking a proactive approach by sending out additional letters to delinquent licensees to make contact and working with the compliance unit to make attempts to resolve fees owed before issuing citations. The licensing unit has also streamlined the procedure for chain licenses. Chain licenses are generated when there are 7 or more locations that are tied to one headquarter location. Licensing has improved their communication with chain contacts by standardizing templates and providing more detailed information concerning renewal fees, due dates, and change of information. Procedures were also developed for issuing directed requests to send to enforcement to obtain field assistance in making contact with businesses licensing is unable to reach. As the procedures were developed, licensing met with the Bureau Chief and policy to ensure new processes met the Bureau's guidelines. Strategic Plan 1.2, review and enhance customer service standards to carry out the mission of the Bureau. The licensing unit has hired more staff and is currently providing training on licensing procedures. Staff continues to work diligently to ensure licensees and applicants are provided information needed to ensure compliance by contacting them directly and following up via email and mail. The licensing unit meets regularly to address any trends and consumer concerns and discusses where improvements can be made. Licensing unit provides weekly application status updates and submits questions for guidance. In addition, monthly reports are administered to determine if there is a backlog or areas that need to be addressed and given additional attention. Strategic Plan 1.3, continually improve online services to increase compliance and reduce barriers to licensure. The newly hired staff has allowed us to improve the assistance provided to applicants regarding application requirements. In addition, the licensing unit has initiated a process where licensing provides a current invoice to enforcement staff for field visits, so the invoice can be provided to businesses in question. Field staff also contacts licensing with questions while in the field, so licensing can provide current and up-to-date information. It looks like Steve might have a question.
Yes, I'm sorry, Jacqueline. Could you go back to licensing statistics for just a moment?
Sure.
Thank you. And first of all, before I say anything, I want to make sure that that you and your team and the enforcement team understand how much we appreciate the efforts and the support that you guys provide to household movers on a daily basis. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
So please help me understand why there's different numbers for permits under the household movers permit and the household movers quarterly revenue report. The permit numbers don't jive, and they don't, even if you add in the new permits issued, it doesn't total up.
That's a great question. So the household mover permits are what we currently have active in our system up above under household mover permits. But under household mover quarterly revenue report, those are the number of permits, like the number of actual licensed permit holders that have submitted revenue for quarterly reports. And that could be because they submitted 3 quarters that haven't paid for. So those two numbers will not ever match because sometimes we're collecting fees on late quarterly reports. So every time they pay another quarterly report, it counts as a hit. So it's one count. So that's why those two numbers aren't going to match. They're totally different data points. Does that make sense?
Total sense. And as always, we appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, I'm going to move on to Strategic Plan 1.4, streamline the electronic filing process for insurance companies to decrease reporting timeframes and increase compliance by household movers. Household mover staff continues to work with applicants and licensees to ensure they are provided support with electronically filing the required insurance. Additionally, licensing unit assists movers when they receive notice of impending lapse of insurance. The licensing unit gathers information needed to help the business and the insurance company provide the insurance requirement information needed to update the system and correct any issues pertaining to their license. When needed, the licensing unit works directly with the California Public Utilities Commission to assist licensees and applicants with system issues involving the electronic filing system. Please note that the e-filing system is planned for development as part of the business modernization project. While it will not take place in the first phase of the development, it will be established in the near future. This concludes the update on the strategic plan objectives. Does the council have any questions? Can we please open it up to public comment?
Certainly, we are opening up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment on this licensing goal area of the strategic plan. If anyone has any comments, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our calling users may press *3 to raise their hand. Each commenter will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
All right, Jacqueline's too humble to say it, but I'm not. Jacqueline, as of this week with the start of a new hire, is fully staffed. She's the only unit in the Bureau that's fully staffed, so good job, Jacqueline. With that, Steve will also, I think it's just helpful because I didn't realize the difference in the permit numbers myself. So I think we're going to add a footnote for the future, just so that's clear on our reporting on the statistics. And with that, I will turn your attention to page 41 of our packet, which is our laboratory statistics, and I will hand it off to Jacob Egger, one of our environmental scientists in the lab.
Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Jake Egger. I'm one of 3 environmental scientists with the Bureau, and today I'm going to be filling you in on what the lab's been up to for the past couple months. First, let's start off with some great news. Rosemary Pacoda, our lab manager, has started her retirement. Hopefully she's not having to watch any more advisory council meetings. But if you are, Rose, congrats. Since we're on the topic of retirement, the lab also retired our old Fourier transform infrared spectrometer, which is a piece of equipment in the lab, and we'll talk more about this later. We also recently hired a new environmental scientist, and this fills out our environmental scientist position that Kelly talked about earlier. So a little bit more of good news. The lab underwent a 3-day on-site NavLab accreditation assessment for the thermal insulation program starting on the September 27th and ending on the 29th. All lab staff worked tirelessly to ensure that we were ISO and IEC 17025 2013 compliant. So thanks, team. Let's go lab. Woo. All right. The lab plans to undergo our biannual 3-day IAS assessment, and this is for accreditation of our furniture and bedding program. And this should take place in April of 2023. That's kind of our approximation there. For the furniture and bedding side, as of September 1st, the lab has a contract for plumage testing. We can start sending out plumage. We haven't had a contract since 2015, so this is good news, and we can start testing things and picking things up. Also, the Bureau is resuming its contract for flame retardant testing with DTSC. This is just a renewable that we've kept up with for the past couple years. For thermal insulation, our thermal insulation directory was updated and posted on the website back in March. I think that was brought up in last advisory council meeting. Manufacturers selling thermal insulation in California must be licensed with the Bureau as a thermal insulation manufacturer, and also must be listed in the Bureau's thermal insulation directory. To be listed in thermal insulation directory, this entails that the manufacturer submits documentation of testing and paying their directory fees. Also, the thermal insulation directory fee letters are being sent out currently, and the next directory will be posted sometime in January. For staffing, Kelly mentioned before that there are currently, I think she said 3 current employment opportunities. We actually have 4 with Rose leaving. That opens up for 1 senior environmental scientist, 2 textile technicians, and 1 office technician. As stated in the previous meeting, the textile tech position is being considered to be reclassed to increase pool of applicants as well as retention purposes. Also, the lab intends to reclassify the office technician position as a staff service analyst or an SSA to meet the operational needs of the lab. Now, on the topic of aging equipment that was brought up last meeting, we had 2 culprits that went out on us. We had first our Fourier Transform Infrared Spectrometer, or FTIR. This instrument is instrumental in fiber analysis for the bedding and furniture program. It was repaired back in July. We weren't able to actually repair it. We actually had to buy a new one because it was too old. And so we are resuming testing there. And then back in November of last year, the thermal insulation program's humidity chamber started acting up, and we had to get that replaced. And that took until June of this year. So now, as of July, we've been able to resume corrosion testing for loose fill cellulose products. And before statistics, and can we open it up for council? Did I lose everything?
No, excuse me, I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
This is Bert Grimes. Are we no longer testing mattresses for flame retardant with an actual flame test, or?
For flame retardants or for flammability?
The flammability on the mattresses.
We still test that. And I'll hop into that in the next part here. Just right before lab statistics, we're opening it up for any comment on the updates here.
Okay, the only reason is I see that bedding, you have a star there. It says basically you're doing label formats, fiber components, finish size, etc. So are we physically burning any mattresses right now?
Yeah, so looking at the statistics slide here, the mattress burning would be 16 CFR 1633. That's the federal flammability standard. So that's the one that you're looking at. Bedding is just for bedding products that we aren't doing flammability on. So that's comforters and whatnot.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No problem. Any other questions? Okay, I guess we can open up to close that and open up to public comment.
Thank you. We've opened up the Q&A feature of WebEx to facilitate public comment. You can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment, and send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand, and each person will be recognized in turn and will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so if you turn to page 41, this is the lab statistics here. So starting off, we'll start with TB 117 2013, or California's smoldering standard for furniture. On average, every quarter, we're receiving about 14 products for smoldering standard testing or TB 117 testing. And each quarter, approximately 15 of those samples are passing and approximately 1's failing. This is an approximate pass rate of 94%. And moving on to the mattress standard for 16 CFR 1633, the federal mattress flammability standard, we receive an average of 5 samples per quarter. 4 passing and 1's failing, which is an 80% pass rate. For thermal insulation testing, we didn't receive any samples. We were working off previous stock. And on average, 3 samples were passing and 2 were failing. And moving on to bedding, throughout all 4 quarters, bedding products are receiving pass notes. Not too much to worry about there. And the last box there is totals of all tests listed. So we don't need to break that down. And let's jump into label review. Labeling, there was one quarter that was much different from the rest, which was the 4th quarter listed here. And in that, we tested a lot less samples. We were only able to perform 12 label reviews, and this is due to our equipment breaking. Our FTIR is really used for, really helps us in doing testing. It's really needed. And also staffing and training issues. As before, we were down in environmental scientists and textile technicians as well. Moving on to the flame retardant chemical statement analysis. This is pertaining to Senate Bill 1019. This is the flammability or the flame retardant chemical statement on the flammability label. Manufacturers are mostly checking off that they're using no added flame retardant chemicals, with the exception of one not checking any box. Moving on to the actual analysis, this is of flame retardant chemical statements. The first group here is what we're sending to the Department of Toxic Substance Control for their testing of compliance for Assembly Bill 2998 and Senate Bill 1019. DTSC is checking to see that samples are containing less than 1,000 parts per million of flame retardant chemicals per component. And on average, we're sending 2 samples a quarter, and out of all 4 quarters, we had 1 failure come back. This was a foam from an upholstered product. And then for the second set there, we have, this is mainly pertaining to SB 1019, where the Bureau can request any flame retardant chemical documentation from a manufacturer. We didn't request any flame retardant chemical documentation this quarter, so those are all zeros. So for the last group of data, we have manufacturing locations of all testing failures. For TB117 2013, there was 1 failure internationally per quarter, approximately. And for 16 CFR 1633, we approximately had 1 failure from a Californian manufacturer and 1 failure from an out-of-state manufacturer, and none internationally. For thermal insulation testing, we on average had 2 failures from a manufacturer in other states in the US, none internationally, and this might be due to us not picking up any internationally manufactured insulation products during these quarters. And on average, no Californian manufacturers were failing for thermal insulation. As I stated before, bedding, there was no failures. And for one of the last boxes here, we have label review. And California's manufacturers are averaging about 6 failing labels. Out of state, US manufacturers are averaging 2 failing labels per quarter, and international manufacturers are averaging 14 failing labels. Also, we tend to receive more international samples than domestic, so that could affect the numbers a little there too. And for FR chemical statement testing, we only had the 1 failure, and that was from an international manufacturer. And for the flame retardant document review, we didn't send out for any, so that's all NA. And that concludes the lab statistics. Can we open it up to council questions? Okay, if there are no questions, I guess we can move on to public.
Thank you. We've opened up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you have any comment on the lab statistics presentation, you can look for the question mark icon, and after you click that, type comment in the text box and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.
Jake, thank you so much. Appreciate the update. With that, before we turn it to the enforcement update, I see that we're coming to noon. I'm fairly confident I can get everyone out of here by 12:30, but I'm very confident I can get you out of here by 1. With that said, would anyone on the council like to take a break before we keep going, or should we just power through?
This is Pascal. I would say we power through if everyone else agrees.
I agree.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So with that, I will please reference page 44 in your packet for the enforcement statistics, and I will hand it over to Alda Curie. Alda?
Thank you, Justin. Good morning. We still have a couple minutes left for the morning. So good morning. My name is Alda Aguirre. I'm the Supervising Special Investigator for the Bureau of Household Goods and Services. I oversee the Southern California Enforcement Field Operations. I will provide the enforcement statistical overview. First, I'd like to address something that came up during last advisory council. We mentioned that upon running new household mover reports for the previously reported data, it was discovered that data was skewed by 28 cases that were reported as closed, then later found to be opened. After auditing these cases, we identified a training issue and have addressed it and updated procedures for staff triaging complaint cases. So this gives you a moment to review the enforcement statistical overview. However, I'd like to draw your attention to the top of page 45, the field unit investigations conducted. For household movers, you'll notice an increase in the number of complaints received by the field unit between the quarter ending in March 2022 and the quarter ending in June 2022, which is expected due to more families moving as the summer months approach. There's also an increase in the amount of household mover cases assigned to the field during that time due to staffing issues in the compliance unit. Now, Shelby Norman has joined the Bureau as our compliance unit manager, who is cross-training staff and hiring new staff to assist with household mover cases. Additionally, our compliance unit staff have taken on more of the home furnishings and thermal insulation and the electronic and appliance repair investigations, working together with the field to complete those investigations, requesting field assistance as needed. Before I move on to proactive enforcement operations, does the council have any questions? Okay, can we open it for public comment?
Certainly. We're opening up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you have any comments on this item, you can look for the question mark icon, and then in the text box, type comment and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
You're welcome.
For proactive enforcement operations, the Enforcement Division has conducted recoveries and hold hostage releases. The Enforcement Division continues to assist consumers in locating and obtaining their goods throughout the state. As a result of our efforts, each year the number of consumers reunited with their goods has increased. During the last advisory council, we reported 109 cases where we assisted in reuniting consumers with their goods. We were able to assist with an additional 24 through the end of June, which brought us to a total of 133 families assisted between July 2021 and June 2022. Additionally, during the last advisory council, a request was made for a chart showing how many hold hostage cases have been handled and how many recoveries were hold hostage cases. After reviewing the information on the cases we handled, we could not provide a chart because the distinction between which cases were hold hostage and which cases were loads left in storage by movers because they were in the same load with the hold hostage or because they were forgotten was not reported in our data. However, in order to provide that chart moving forward, we have provided information to our compliance unit and special investigators explaining the following. A hold hostage case is one in which, one, the mover has full supervision and control of the consumer's goods. Two, after taking possession, the mover is demanding additional payment outside of the agreed upon contracted price as a condition of releasing the consumer's goods. And three, the demand for additional payment is not permissible by law. Additionally, we've made changes to our weekly and monthly reporting forms to include totals for hold hostage case releases and recoveries that do not involve hold hostage cases. This information will be included in our next advisory council, beginning with the quarter that starts September 1st of 2022. Although it was mentioned before, I would like to mention again that without the cooperation of the storage facilities, these recoveries would have been very difficult. We are grateful for their cooperation. I would also like to mention that Special Investigator Raleigh Jacoby, who led our team during the initial recovery operations in October 2021 and has continued to assist others in their recovery operations, has been chosen to receive the Achievement Medal from the City of Portland Bureau of Police for his efforts and teamwork in investigating and solving a moving company scam in the City of Portland. We are very proud of Special Investigator Jacoby. Now I will provide an update on outreach. The Enforcement Division has continued to attend consumer task force meetings with several law enforcement agencies, along with other regulatory agencies, working together to share information on current cases, strategies, and trends affecting consumer protection. We have also worked with deputy district attorneys throughout the state to assist with investigations. For sample procurement, we are working with online retailers to coordinate obtaining samples for testing of bedding and furniture products. Now for an update on posting citations 30 days after each quarter. During the last advisory council, we discussed posting citations 30 days after each quarter. Currently, we are working on formatting issues and a procedure for making sure this is completed while we are refining the statistics. Before I move on to strategic objectives, does the council have any questions?
Yes, this is Steve Whiteycamp, California Moving and Storage. First of all, thank you very much for the efforts of your team in Southern California and the Northern California team on enforcement actions. I would say that on the hold hostage situation, I appreciate defining it, but I would also say that I would not underemphasize the abandoned shipments. For example, you mentioned there's a whole lot of abandoned shipments, and I think from the consumer perspective, those are almost potentially as problematic as the hostage shipments. So I think that while we want to continue to address and focus on the whole hostage, we don't want to neglect those abandoned shipments that we find in those investigations.
Thank you. I couldn't agree with you more. Sometimes they are even more work than hold hostage cases. So thank you. Can we open it for public comment now?
It does look like Councilmember Bert Grimes has his hand up.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't see that.
Excuse me, that's fine. On the citations, can we get the website updated to have all the different citations? And I think the last time it's 2019. I think it would help the consumers if they go in to check a license to see if there's citations against them. And it just seems that the website's outdated.
You're absolutely right, Bert, and we are going to be doing that. It's a priority.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you. Can we open it for public comments?
Of course. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has a comment about these enforcement statistics, you can look for the question mark icon, and then in that text box, type comment and click send. The other option to request comment is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I see no request for comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, now moving on to the strategic objectives. So for an update on our strategic objectives, Goal 2, Consumer Protection and Enforcement, I will review and provide information for the strategic objectives 2.1 and 2.5 from our strategic plan. For 2.2, implementing proactive enforcement and sting operations to enhance consumer protection and increase permit household movers in the state, Justin will speak to this. For 2.3, annually soliciting input from partners on industry trends and business practices to ensure the Bureau uses up-to-date enforcement investigative practices. Justin spoke to this earlier during his outreach plan. And for 2.4, coordinating outreach to law enforcement agencies and local prosecutors to increase cooperation amongst different agencies. Justin already mentioned the California District Attorney Association Fraud Symposium and the additional details for our outreach plan. So now I'll discuss Strategic Plan 2.1, which is establishing processes and procedure in enforcement operations to ensure accountability of all regulated populations. The enforcement team has developed complaint intake procedures for household movers, which includes progressive discipline procedures for egregious cases, case and citation number process and procedures for the issuing of case numbers and citations, reporting of citations and fines, citation and cease operation letter mailing procedures to ensure the proper service of citations and cease letters mailed to businesses we are unable to make contact with, and businesses whose offices are outside of California. License hold procedures to ensure license renewal holds are placed on businesses who have not paid their fines, inspection report process and procedures for field visits that do not result in citations, investigation report procedures and case closure procedures to include recording closure codes for cases and closure letters for complainants. For 2.5, leveraging the Bureau's Memorandum of Agreement with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration to protect California consumers from unpermitted interstate movers. Having access to the FMCSA database has been essential in assisting enforcement to gather information on additional victims and household movers. From when our compliance unit triages cases, the database serves as a tool to assist with the identification of household movers for complaints that were filed with minimal information on the mover. Additionally, the database has assisted in locating victims outside of California whose belongings were found in storage for the recovery operations. We have also been able to work with FMCSA to assist California consumers who have moved to other states by working together to assist with the release of goods and to provide information to law enforcement agencies in other states. Does the council have any questions? Can we open it for public comment?
Certainly, and we are opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has any comments on the action items for the enforcement goal, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send. The other option is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand raise icon, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that Q&A feature?
Yes, please do. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Although, thank you so much for the update. I'm actually going to be handling our sting operations. So when we work on the Bureau meeting minutes for each meeting, Yafana Lamar actually checks the video for everything that was said. I literally used the word, I promise you. I used those words, 2 sting operations by the date of this meeting. I'm sorry to say that I did not fulfill that promise. In essence, I am happy with the progress that we've made up to now, and I expect in early November to do a sting operation somewhere in Northern California. I don't want to give more specifics than that. And I expect in December to do a sting operation in Southern California. Again, I don't want to give a lot of specifics about that. Largely, this has been a resource issue, just the fact that we're still trying to fill positions, and there's only so many things staff can do at any given time. I am happy to report I've had several incredibly productive conversations with Ken Garcia at our Division of Investigation. We have hammered out a procedure. We understand sort of who should be on site, and we also have a procedure for planning these sting operations based on the individual location. So I am happy to report that I think everyone's moving in the right direction. I just wish I had a sting operation for you, and that's no one's fault but my own. I plan to provide an update to both Steve Weidekamp and Sarah Oakley after both operations are complete, but I don't want to provide a lot of details before then, just in the interest of making sure no one's tipped off to what's going on. With that, I will open it up to the council for comment. Again, you have my humblest apologies.
Justin, Steve Weidekamp, you are forgiven as long as we have those November and December sting operations completed this year.
I will keep you posted. And once each operation is complete, you'll see an email from me, and I'll provide more specifics once everything's wrapped up for the year. And I hope to go into 2023 doing many more sting operations.
Thank you.
Any additional comments from the council? Any public comment, Ann?
And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has any comment on the report about sting operations, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send. The other option to request a comment is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you so much, Ann.
You're welcome.
All right, in the interest of time, I'll keep my intro short from here on out. We're going to move on to item 7. Yafana Lamar will start us off with an update on some legislation.
Hi, good afternoon, Advisory Council members, and welcome to new members, keepers, in Oakley. I want to start with a quick update on our activities for the policy unit. The end of the year is usually the busiest time for us. This year, we'll be writing implementation memos for legislation that impacts Bureau administrative functions. So this will be an internal document, but it will be part of making sure that we meet mandates that just went through the legislature. We will also be issuing new law books to reflect changes to the Electronic and Appliance Repair Dealer Registration Law and the Home Furnishings and Thermal Insulation Act law books. There were not changes to the Household Mover Act, so there will not be an update to that. The Bureau will also issue an industry advisory to address a legislative change that I will discuss shortly when I talk about legislation. We will also be updating and publishing the tariff with respect to the 3-day requirement to provide consumers with an agreement for moving services. My goal this year is to push that publication date up to the beginning of, or at least 5 business days before January 1st so that the new rates can be applied to all moves starting January 1st or later. Thank you, Steve. We'll also be hosting, or we're planning to host a licensing regulation workshop to address permit requirements under the Household Movers Act. The workshop is the same that was scheduled for March 25th, 2020, then was canceled when the state shut down on March 23rd due to COVID. The purpose of the workshop is to solicit feedback from industry regarding agenda items that are similar to the previous workshop. Those included discussing challenges or issues related to specific business models, for example, restoration companies, brokers, interstate movers, and storage container delivery services. The goal is not to grant exemptions. The goal is to eliminate barriers to obtaining a permit so that we can ensure that they are compliant. We are looking for locations and planning on a meeting in Southern California, just like the last one was. The workshop we're looking at early December. However, we would like to hear from the Advisory Council and industry if there are agenda items you would like us to discuss or facilitate discussion on. Also, if you have suggestions for locations or specific dates that you would like us to consider. That's the end of the unit update. Are there any questions from the Advisory Council members? Okay. Are there any questions from the public?
And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If anyone has any comment on the legislation and policy update, you may look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can use *3 to raise their hand. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
So I'll move on to agenda item 7A. And to the moderator, and I will ask advisory council members if they have questions after each bill. I'm going to save public comment for the end out of respect for time. Okay, so the first bill, agenda item 7A, it's on page 48 of your materials. This bill would have created a permit exemption for movers who do not pack the household goods. This bill is shown in its final form, which is in draft form. This bill failed passage and is officially dead. This was the second year of the legislative 2-year cycle, so it will not be moving again next year. Advisory Council member Whitecamp advocated for permit requirements for all movers and did a great job communicating potential consumer harm that would have come from this bill. So I just wanted to thank you for your work on that. The Bureau plans to work with the bill sponsors, however, to address their concerns during the licensing regulation workshop that I just spoke about. So the idea, while the bill is not moving, we still have some issues that we would like to address. Are there any questions from the council members? Hearing none, I'll go to agenda item 7B. The bill's language starts on page 53. AB 2912 by Assemblymember Berman prohibits the effective date of a warranty on a consumer product from commencing before the delivery date of the product. This bill has not been previously presented and was suggested by new member keepers, so thank you for that. This bill also does not show amendments because I included the bill's final form in the material, so I highlighted where the amendments to law are. This bill tangentially impacts Bureau service contractors because a service contract cannot start if a manufacturer's warranty is still effective. So if the manufacturer's warranty can't start until the date of delivery, down the line, that impacts the effective date of the service contract and will affect how we handle complaints about service contracts. It would establish either, based on the effective dates, it would either be non-jurisdictional or we could resolve it if it's a service contract. So this is a good time to remind council members too that if you see a bill that you would like us to watch, we are happy to do that. We can also report on any bills of interest at meetings. So if you notice anything next year, please let us know. Any questions on this bill? From advisory council members, sorry. Okay, agenda item 7C, this bill starts on page 55 of your materials. AB 2956, authored by the Committee on Transportation. This bill, among the many amendments, are changes to conform with SB 19, which transferred administration of the Household Movers Act to the Bureau. Although this bill is technically an omnibus bill, meaning it makes technical, clarifying, non-substantive changes, it actually has a big impact on the household moving industry. Vehicle Code Section 34601 requires motor carriers of property to register as such with the Department of Motor Vehicles. However, if the motor carrier of property is a household mover and is transporting household goods under a mover's permit issued by the language previously said the Public Utilities Commission, they are exempt from the registration. That should read a permit issued by the Bureau. We heard from industry that when CHP pulls over a mover for an inspection, they've been issued tickets for not being able to produce that permit from the PUC. So we hope that this bill's amendment removes that issue for our permitted movers. The policy unit plans to issue an industry alert before the end of the year to make our permit holders aware of the change and to hopefully give them something they can carry with them in case they're stopped, just to show what the law says effective January 1st. This is also an opportunity to collaborate with the California Highway Patrol, and this is something Justin mentioned when he gave his outreach plan update. Are there any questions or comments about this bill? Thank you, Steve. Okay, moving on to the last bill, agenda item 7D, starts on page 81. SB 1443 by Senator Roth. This bill extends the repeal date of sections of the electronic and appliance repair dealer registration law to allow for the 1-year extension on the Bureau's sunset review. So you'll see on the highlighted amendments that the date is now, before the bill, it read that the sections would be repealed in 2023. Now they're going to repeal in 2024. Those are expected to be extended again by the sunset bill. A typical extension bill is 4 years, but that will be discussed during the sunset review process. Additionally, you might see that there are some sections that have two versions. There's one version that includes service contractors and one that doesn't. This is because the service contractors licensing authority was originally a pilot program, and so they always just have a version that will go into effect if the service contractors article is repealed. And with that, that's all of legislation. Are there any questions on that bill from advisory council members? Okay, Anne, can you open it up for public comment, please?
Certainly, we are opening the WebEx Q&A feature for public comment. If anyone has any comment about any of the bills mentioned, you may look for the question mark icon, typically in the lower right of your screen, and click that, type the word comment in the text box and click send. The other option is to raise your hand to be recognized by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And I do not see any requests for public comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next agenda item is the fee study, and Diana Godinez, policy manager, will give that update.
Hello, everyone. In the last council meeting, I mentioned that we would have a final report from CPS that we would be able to present during this October advisory council meeting. For those new to our meetings, CPS HR is a consultant we've contracted with to conduct a fee study on the Bureau's 3 funds to determine whether existing fees are appropriate to recover actual costs of enforcing the Bureau's practice acts. The study will also look into whether the Bureau should combine all 3 funds into a single fund and what that fund would look like. Our report to council will need to be delayed until next council meeting as CPS continues to conclude their draft report. The Bureau had a few significant expenditures affecting this year's budget that need to be considered in CPS's analysis to provide a more accurate picture of the Bureau's funds. Those expenditures include the 5 new positions established via budget change proposals and the contract for the BizMod implementation. Since the expenditures affect each program, CPS will need to determine how the increased costs may or may not affect program fees. Next steps are to receive a draft report followed by a final report and presentation to the Bureau. We anticipate the final report to be concluded before the end of this year. I'll open it up for any questions from council. Seeing none, open it for public comment.
And we're opening up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment on this update, you can look for the question mark icon, type comment and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hands. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it back to Chief Paddock.
Hi, everyone. I'm just speaking briefly on agenda item 7F, our law label update. Specifically, we've been able to send this out to quite a few stakeholders, several companies, a few of which are Feather and Down experts as well. So far, we've received only one comment back. I want to thank Worldwide Registration Services for their comment. It was related to a date of delinquency proposed regulation addition, which is essentially a section of our regulation where we're just putting additional things that are permissible on our law label. These aren't things that a manufacturer has to put on. They had some questions about date of delivery. Because it's a permissible information item, my comment is essentially going to be to the effect that companies don't need to include that information. They just need to be clear on any information they do provide. So if the date of delivery is to a supplier versus a retailer, et cetera. It looks like there was some concern just with other states that do require that date of delivery. There was some confusion. The state of California does not, though. We're still waiting for comment from several of our IABFLO members. So, for example, those are my counterparts in other states, as well as some return comments from Feather and Down. My hope is I'm trying to give everyone through the fall to give me their comments, and then I plan to submit this package to the department's legal office by the time winter hits. Any questions from the council on the law label?
Yeah, Justin, this is Don Lucas. I was just wondering if you tried to reach out on the labeling to overseas manufacturers, since they seem to be having the most problem meeting the regulations.
I have to a few companies, but admittedly, most of those are in Europe. I have not to date, but I actually do need to do this. I will reach out to some Asian manufacturers as well, and I'll look for some Oceania manufacturers also. Would you suggest any others?
I think that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments from the council? Ann, could you open it to public comment?
Certainly, and we're opening up the WebEx Q&A to facilitate public comment. If you have any public comment on the furniture and bedding law label regulatory proposal, you may look for the question mark icon, click that, type the word comment and click send, or you can click on the hand icon to raise your hand, or our call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Ann.
You're welcome.
With that, I hand it back over to Yafana Lamar for our sunset report.
Hi, I will be presenting the next 2 agenda items to wrap up the legislative and policy updates. Agenda item 7G is a sunset review update. The sunset report has been written. It was submitted to the department for review in early September. It has made it through the Division of Legislative Affairs and is currently undergoing executive review. From there, it will go to our agency office and then the governor's office for approval and for submission to the legislature. As soon as it is approved and submitted, we will get a copy of the final 2 advisory council members. We will also post it to the website. A quick review of the process from here on out. The draft report addresses each of the issues brought up by the advisory council members. However, we have to wait until it's approved to discuss specific content. Once it's published, the legislature will interview the chief and use content from the report and interview to write a background paper, which will be published on the Senate Sunset Review page. The background paper will identify issues of interest to the legislature on which the Bureau will respond to in writing and during chief testimony at the public hearing. Last year, the hearings were in March. Pre-COVID, they started in February. So we're not sure exactly when those will be held. We are preparing to be ready for February. After that hearing, a sunset bill will be introduced. And I wanted to let you know the sunset hearings, the sunset review and the bill policy hearings are all public and anybody is welcome to attend. Are there any questions about where we are in the sunset review process from Advisory Council? Seeing none, are there any public comment?
And this is the moderator. We are opening the Q&A feature of WebEx for public comment. And if you have any comment on the sunset plan, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand raise icon, or our call-in users can use *3 to raise your hand. And I do not see any requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on to agenda item 7H. There's a page in your materials, page 95, that shows the objectives from the strategic plan. So I won't read them to you. I'll just refer to them by number. So objective 4.1. This item was covered in agenda item 7F, so it was right before the sunset report. So you have that update. Objective 4.2. We received feedback from DCA Legal, and we are updating the text, ISOR, and notice to prepare the HHM regulation package for notice. Once we receive approval to post, it will be publicly noticed on our website. We'll send out listserv blasts, and we will notify advisory council members. Based on Office of Administrative Law submission deadlines and assuming no contingencies, we are looking at an April 1 effective date. So this will likely be an agenda item at the next meeting to give an update on whether there were contingencies or if we were able to move along as planned. Objective 4.3, this will be covered in agenda item 9 by Chief Paddock. Objective 4.4, this is a long-term goal that would be considered after sunset review and HHM licensing regulations are underway. So there won't be an update on this one for about a year. And then objective 4.5, this objective was raised in our draft sunset report. If it's determined to be not appropriate for the sunset process, we will begin exploring how we can address the issue in the regulatory process. Are there any questions about the legislation and regulations goals from the strategic plan? Okay, are there any public comments?
Council member Tom Keeper.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right. I'm moving between AirPods and whatnot. Just was curious about, are you a good person for me to follow up with then on 4.5?
Yes.
Just to learn more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can contact me or Diana Godinez anytime.
Okay, thank you. I'll kind of have my other hat on when that kind of thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now public comment, please.
Thank you. And so we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have a comment on the goal area mentioned for the strategic plan, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment and click send, or you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and our call-in users can use *3 to raise their hand. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you, Anne.
You're welcome.
And I'll kick it back to Chief Paddock. We already covered agenda item 8, so he will now present agenda item 9, update on Bureau regulation of ignition interlock devices. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Fauna. So I just wanted to provide a brief update to the council. I've reached out to my counterparts at the Bureau of Automotive Repair as well as the DMV. Based on the discussions I've had to date, I don't see a lot of changes on the regulatory spectrum. anytime soon. So again, as far as making sort of administrative updates to the program at the moment, there isn't a lot of discussion around that. However, I do want to sort of, for lack of a cliche word, pivot a bit the conversation to utilizing our sunset review process. And so I plan to reach out to our IID members specifically in the coming weeks to discuss anything they'd like to pursue legislatively. Again, the Bureau would act as a technical expert for that, but it is a good opportunity while the Bureau undergoes sunset review to make any reforms that the industry or consumers would want to see with regards to the regulation of the ignition interlock device program. Again, as Fawn has already mentioned, sometime in February or March, we'll be testifying before the Business and Professions and Economic Development Committees of the legislature on our sunset review process, and that's an excellent opportunity if anyone in industry would like to make any changes to the statutory framework of ignition interlock devices. With that, I'll sort of open it up to council comment. Toby, it looks like your hand is raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you and look forward to the opportunity to visit with you and your staff about where we're going from here.
Thanks, Toby. I do is set up a call with you as well as Dan. We can get into sort of what you're looking at and how we can be helpful.
Okay, thank you. Look forward to it.
Dan, I saw you unmuted. Did you have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say thank you as well. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm very interested to hear because last meeting we had discussed kind of getting the right hand to talk to the left hand, and it sounds like you're already making steps in that direction. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. With that, Ann, can we open it to public comment?
Certainly. And we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you'd like to make a comment on the ignition interlock device topic, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send. The other alternative is to raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, and call-in users can press *3 to raise their hand. And I see no requests for comment. Shall I close that feature?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
So this will be our last substantive item for the day. Again, trying to get you out of here by 1 o'clock, so I apologize that I broke into so much of your lunch hour. But with that, if you can sort of move to your calendars, council members, as well as our legal counsel and our staff. I have a few ideas to propose, one of which is typically I'd like to do a February, June, and October meeting. This year, I'd actually like to do a January meeting, if possible, if that's going to work with council member schedules. The reason for that is, again, it's the DA conference that we talked about in February. And then also, we're not quite sure when we would actually testify for our sunset review. That could happen in February. It could happen in March. So with that in mind, I wanted to see if Thursday, January 19th was a problem for any of our council members.
Not a council member, Justin, but that is the one day in January I have a meeting scheduled. Forgive me.
Not a problem.
Also, Justin, this is Dan Rhodes. I was going to suggest, just for whoever might be flying in, if they're not doing it virtually, Wednesday it might just be all around cost and ability. There's a lot less travelers on Wednesday than there are Thursdays. But I was going to suggest the 18th already. So I could do either one, but it was just my suggestion.
How does the 18th sound for others?
This is Pascal. Works for me.
Works for me. Keeper's here.
I'm good.
I'm good, Don Lucas.
All right, and I'll go with silence is consent, which is just a classic legal doctrine we threw out. Sounds like January 18th will do. My next question for the council is just, Do you like the 10 o'clock? Would you prefer the 9 o'clock? Don't care. Silence, I'll just keep it at 10 a.m. But again, I may eat into your lunch again.
Oh, 10 a.m. is better if we're traveling, that's for sure.
I was about to say the same thing, 10 a.m. because I try to do it all in the same day. So fly in and fly out same day, 10 a.m. Has me still leaving the house at 3 in the morning kind of thing. So.
Got it. Perfect. Okay, so we'll keep it at 10 a.m. And then last but not least, would you like these in person this year? Happy to accommodate that. I think so far we've heard a resounding yes. Do I have any no's? All right. I again, with silence, I think we're going to pursue the hybrid approach. When something comes up or council members are unable to travel, I'll make sure you can still participate on this platform, but we'll also have an in-person location. Sticking with the Wednesday theme, because that really is a good point that when I'm looking at airfares, Tuesday and Wednesday are usually the cheaper ones. How would Wednesday, June 14th work for our second date in the year? Wednesday, June 14th. I see Steve Sum. All right, we'll go with silence as acceptance again. We'll do Wednesday, June 14th. And then last but not least, to wrap out our year, how about Wednesday, October 11th? Steve's good. All right.
Justin, I'm sorry.
Oh, go on.
It's Michael. I'm sorry to do this again, but I actually have a meeting that day. That's the one day in October 2023 I have a meeting. Forgive me.
All right, Michael, whose schedule is as far out as I do? You gotta put them on Front Street.
That would be Cemetery and Funeral Bureau.
All right. Well, good job. Good job to that bureau. How is Wednesday the 18th for everyone's schedules?
That day doesn't work for me. The 25th is fine.
Let's try that Thursday, at least for that part of the year. How about Thursday the 12th?
Yes.
It's fine.
Any concerns with Thursday the 12th? All right. So just to recap, and I am going to open it for public comment. I know we have a lot of industry members joining us. They may want to make us aware of a conference I'm not aware of at the moment. But just to recap, so far we have a tentative January 18th, which is a Wednesday, June 14th, and Thursday, October 12th for 2023, all starting at 10 a.m., all having an in-person component. Just before I move on to public comment, any last objections by the council? With that, Ann, would you mind opening it to public comment?
Certainly, and we've opened up the WebEx Q&A feature to facilitate public comment. If you have any comment on the dates proposed, you can look for the question mark icon, type the word comment in the text box and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon, or if you are a call-in user, pressing *3 will raise your hand. Each person will have 3 minutes. And I do not see any requests for comment. I can close that feature.
Thank you so much, Ann.
You bet.
Again, we'll update our website, but we will see you next time, January 18th. But we'll have all 3 dates for 2023 on our schedule. And with that, we'll move to our final agenda item, which is adjournment. Again, let me just ask the council, first of all, any future agenda items you'd like to see that we haven't discussed or I haven't overly promised already for next year? And again, we'll reach out to the council for suggested agenda items about 2 months before we meet, just so we can get that agenda updated. But you can give me ideas for agenda items anytime. You can just shoot me an email. With that, Ann, would you mind opening it up to the public for any agenda items they'd like to see in the future?
Certainly. If anyone has any suggestions for future agenda items, you can click on the question mark icon, type the word comment, and click send, or raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon. And I see no requests for comment. I can close that if you'd like.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, council and participants, I very much appreciate your participation today. I hope you have a great afternoon. I look forward to seeing you again in January. Thank you all. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. I know.
Thank you, Justin.
Thanks,
everyone.
Justin.
Thank you very much.